the topic said business value in streaming. So I'll probably not go super hardcore on tech. I actually can't because I'm the CEO. I have to look after the business. If you have any tech questions, I've got some people with me like Jules. He knows it much better than I do from a technical point of view. But let's look at why streaming and what kind of value it brings. So setting the scene. Real-time decision-making in data is increasingly essential. Like the data we generated in the past 40 years with all that past mirror thing is a bit like driving your car forward by looking into the rear mirror. It's probably not going to work that way. So we'll have to do something on data and what we do with the data. So obviously we also have data in motion and data at rest. So things that we move or things that get generated or things that we stored in the past. And we have some different analytical needs depending on what department you're working with and for. Also what we see is we are supporting analytical and operational use cases. Becomes more and more of a case. I've just recently did a Gartner show in London. There's a whole venue just of people selling you data lineage and data observability and data governance and data whatever type things. And I just walked in and walked out and thought like the fool with the tool is still a fool. I didn't know what the hell they were trying to sell. I kind of know what they're doing, but it just didn't make sense. So what we are thinking is, how would it be if we have it in one single pane of glass with going platform? Because a platform doesn't mean we need to do everything ourselves. It could be that we just connect and have partners and other things in it. Admittedly, half the stuff I'm telling you here is not yet in existence. We're going to launch the first version a bit later this year. Then we keep adding things. There's a vision. In Germany, there's a joke: if you have a vision, you see a doctor. But it's a vision. Imagine a platform where data management has all of the right abilities. Sorry, starting a sentence again. The data platform gives you the ability to turn like a virtual knob, to go between your needs, between like, let's say, batch and everything in real time. And we call it the business SLA because it should be dominated by what the business needs and not what the tech says. That's also one thing I'll explain in a second. And obviously the unified platform democratizes the stream processing and analytics, both operational and analytical use cases. I have a hard time with that word democratize, but it's probably something being used all the time. A little driven, as you may notice, and we are sort of over-democratized right now where nothing is moving. So, anyhow, so data what? So in my past, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, I learned this to be data warehousing type things, where you store data, you ETL and extract, transform, load. Then you look at some data warehouse and you don't really know what you're looking at. I call it data swamp. It's just we collect data. And when I went to uni, we still learned that when you process data, you turn it into information. Information is what we then use. I think we dropped that information term, we'll just keep calling it data. Then over the years, we started developing these data lake houses. I mean, that's a really nice and scenic idea of sitting by the lake with your data, doing something with it, turned on. But still, there's a lot of different formats. And obviously, we have structured and unstructured data to deal with. And it's still taking a lot of people's time and brain power to make sense of it. So it doesn't work with the way, no, it actually works. So I'm going to change my name to AI Walters and just, no, because I'm kind of hoping there's some AI thing in there that can help us. And then there's something missing, which I'll talk about in a second. But for us, we originally created a Fling, do a lot of streaming things. And then what we noticed is just doing streaming, it's like making tires. You can't do anything with it. You have to put it on the car, and then you have to drive it, and you have to do something. So streaming is fine, but something else has to. And how can we actually put all this together by having the data and the streaming combined? And that for us was the idea of a streaming lakehouse. We introduced that last spring forward. I think we call it Streamhouse. We don't have the trademark yet, but something we're working on. The idea is, in essence, that you have the different sources, be it Kafka or anything that you want. You ingest it through streaming. or batch in streaming, but let's make it one type of thing. That's that version. Then we store that in a streaming lakehouse compatible data. That is currently being developed. That S3 native format. There's a couple of beta versions internally. It's using Apache Flink, Apache Pymon, all open source technologies, and the next one is going to be, code name is Plus, also going to be open source. So if you don't want to go to a vendor like us and spend your time yourself, be invited. There is the open source things. If you want it out of the box and ready to go, come and speak to any of us. But the purpose is really to have one single platform to have your data visualized, reported, you can analyze, and obviously do a bit of ML and AI training. Just before, even this morning, we talked about training your model with historical data is fine. Then you ask a question, which is kind of from last week, and it fails. So you constantly need to update the model. And then you typically want to do that with insane kind of logic behind it. So you're using batch and streaming from one kind of source with one kind of logic may make a lot of sense. I call this the triangle of horror. No, but you end up here. So no matter where you go, for us, you end up in that streaming backups. Now, the big thing, the tech behind it. So obviously in Lakehouse, we ingest, we see a lot of Iceberg, Spark, Flink, pretty type things. That's what we see also competitors market quite heavily, like Confluent introducing Iceberg, Group or Tabular the other week, Databricks. That's the commercial version of Iceberg. As well as that. For us, it's more the Pymon type stream that we think is important. Flink, CDC, the change data capture, which is recently open source. And then there's obviously different types of streamings, connectors, Kafka, Flink. Just a word on Flink. It's 10 years old. We're celebrating that in October with our Flink Forward. For a technology that's 10 years old, it feels kind of fresh. And I think it really made it last year when Confluent picked out K streams and added Flink to that thing. So a competitor has really done us all a favor, I would say. Because we don't really need to sell Flink anymore. We can now sell things on top of Flink, what Flink can do. So Ververica, made in Germany, might not be the size that you would imagine. We are 70 people and we are part of the Alibaba group. And there's another 150 people working on Flink. So it's a big Flink knowledge that we have, and some may be white and some may be Chinese, but that doesn't matter for us. I'm one or two German in the company, the other 68 are all international. So nothing on that topic. However, obviously, being part of that Flink thing, we've taken it and tweaked it. Now, what we call Vera, I think the others call it Coral at Confluent. There is some stream later, can't remember the name, or whatever. It seems to be the new thing that everyone needs to follow the acronym for the engine. But we have a few things in it that make it faster, up to 2 times, or actually 3 times, depending on how you read the statistics. We're still debating that internally. It's 100% compatible, and that's why we're saying it has no vendor lock-in. If you use our platform, you can test it, you can see if it works for you. If it doesn't, you can always go back to open source. The next version will have multi-engine options. But what we see from our platform that we currently have, and obviously that platform that we could have in the future, is that Flink itself is not in the center of the attention anymore. It's what you do with them. It's a bit like a phone. And I think anyone has it for the sake of it being a phone. You all have it for having an app. And if I think about how many phone calls I make, I think it's probably 1 hour a month. I'm just using it for apps. That's sort of my vision where I'd like to take this Flink topic. It has to be as simple as an app. You click a button, it does something, and the non-technical person just gets its bang for its buck. That's the say 1 or 2 views, which is identical to what we've seen in the past in other areas like the world, like VCRs or, I don't know. Anyone still borrowing videotapes? It's streaming. And that's one of the big issues with streaming. When I started at Ververica, everyone thought I was working at Netflix or anything similar, but it's streaming. No, it's data streaming or streaming data. So our view of the world is that we have our engine at the core. We have 3 strategic topics that we want to address, which is the data movement type topic. The stream processing is what we've always been doing, and now the new thing is the streaming on the lake. Some use cases or applications. Some of our customers do the IoT telematics type thing, and it could be very universal, whether it's car manufacturing, car painting, or any kind of IoT. I have this dream that I really want to put Fling, our platform, on a small Raspberry Pi cluster and put it on some oil rig in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean to do some processing. That's my kind of view and hope. Maybe we'll get there. Obviously, I've just spoiled the beans. Our parent Alibaba is using it for real-time pricing. And the joke is it was cheaper to buy the company than buy licenses. So it's how they ended up with us. No, it's a joke. There's a couple of security as a service use cases out there where departments of bigger companies are doing security type things. XM Cyber, for example, is one I can name. I have a slide on booking.com. There's a security use case. Fraud detection, the good old basic one. I think that's something we've documented with ING. There's an ING speaker here, that's why I'm pointing that way. Risk assessment, user analysis, like you're categorizing your spending on your bank account. I know a lot of banks are doing, and it's more than just you. Flight operations. There's plenty of applications you can think about. In the interest of time, well, this is the technical thing, if anyone is interested in that. But in essence, let's say we do it all. So, yeah, these are some numbers from our parent. They run Flink at 2 million plus CPU cores during their shopping festivals. So it really goes to scale. I can tell you the open source Flink doesn't. There's a different backend behind it that we have in our platform, but the open source doesn't scale development. It's deeper, harder, faster. It just goes more and more every year. But they are one of the biggest users today. So the one I wanted to talk about also in terms of business value is the use case we have with Booking. It's an orchestration tool. Well, they're using it as an orchestration tool, so to say, because it makes it easier to operate by using a platform. And their use case is security-driven. When you book a room and say you are in the Netherlands with a Dutch credit card, it's probably likely that you are a good person. If, however, you are, and no disrespect if there's any Nigerians in Nigeria with a Ukrainian card and booking 20 rooms in Venezuela, it may not be such a good transaction. And they're just using it for such kind of logics to detect fraud or prevent that. I also know other companies like Airbnb are using it, but they're not a customer of Uber. Every time you pull out your phone, call an Uber, it generates a price based on your location and your phone. I have 2 phones that have 2 different prices, so I can validate that. And that also runs through Flink. Not us. But here the thing is, from a business value, productivity perspective, instead of doing it themselves, they bought a platform, they bought software, they're getting the updates from us. And what they told me is like 20 people, they didn't have to use an infrastructure anymore building the thing. They can use those people building the applications. Now, those might not be the identical people, but if you want to move up your stack into a more value-generating type thing, what we commonly see is a tendency right now to move to buying versus build. I know this is heavily driven towards us, but I think you'll get the slides afterwards so you can have a read through. But our vision and view is like, we'd like to be everywhere a customer wants us to be. By that I mean, we not only run on some clouds, we also run on premise. I'm an old guy. I like on premise. I like to hack things, and I know the AWS people will tell me otherwise. But I started, one of my career steps was working at VMware in virtual machines. That's what I like, hugging my server state. But the point is, I am not the one, or we are not the one telling you where you should run it. It's typically some CISO or some governing agency that you as a bank have to put your data into a bunker in the mountain in Switzerland, or I don't know, whatever it is. And I'm not the one making the decision. However, what we want to achieve is have an identical platform on any kind of environment so that you can test or demo or develop in Hub, for example, and then run it in production in your bar. And with that, I think I made up some time. Thank you.